The wind moved slowly across the open plains, like a living thing, bending the tall grass and carrying with it the dry scent of dust, leather and old memories. And on that lonely stretch of land stood a small ranch that most men ignored because it offered nothing worth stealing, nothing but a weathered house, a creaking barn, and a fence made from rough timber that had seen too many winters. Yet that night the ranch glowed faintly under the moonlight, not with fire or lamps, but with a strange, quiet presence that pressed against the air itself, as if the land was holding its breath. Inside the house lived Elias Crow, a man bent by age but not broken, a man whose eyes carried stories he never told. And with him lived his granddaughter Mara, a girl no older than 17, raised on hard work, silence, and respect for the land. They had no guards, no hired guns, no neighbors close enough to hear a scream, and that was exactly why the raiders chose them. 5 men rode in from the south just before midnight, their horses dark, their faces hidden beneath scarves, and their intentions carved from greed and cruelty. They had burned other ranches, robbed families, and left nothing but ashes behind. And to them, this place looked no different. They dismounted quietly, boots sinking into the dirt, rifles held loose but ready, laughter low and cruel in their throats. The leader, a man called Rourke, scanned the property with a predator's patience, already imagining the fear in the old man's eyes, the helplessness of the girl, the easy victory. Then he saw it. Hanging on the fence near the gate, stretched carefully and treated with reverence, was a white buffalo hide, pale as moonlit snow, its surface marked with faint natural patterns that almost looked like symbols. The laughter stopped. One of the men froze mid-step, his breath catching, as if the air had turned to ice. Another whispered a curse under his breath. Rourke felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine, something he hadn't felt since childhood stories told by a grandmother he never listened to. Everyone in the frontier knew the legend, even if they pretended not to believe it. A white buffalo was sacred, a sign of destiny, protection, and judgment. Killing one was said to bring disaster, but this meant something else. This meant the land itself had chosen its guardian. For a long moment no one moved. The wind howled harder, snapping the fence slightly, making the hide ripple as if it were alive, watching them. Rourke shook his head, forcing a grin, calling his men fools for being scared of old tales. Yet his voice lacked its usual strength. He stepped closer to the fence, reaching out as if to prove his courage, but the moment his fingers brushed the hide, a sharp pain shot through his hand, not physical but deeper, like a memory that wasn't his own. He pulled back fast, heart pounding. Images flashed in his mind. Fire consuming men, horses screaming, blood soaking the soil, and a massive white form standing unbroken amid the chaos. Behind the fence, the house door creaked open slowly. Elias stepped out, shotgun in hand, his posture calm, his face unreadable, and beside him stood Mara, eyes steady, unafraid. "You're standing on protected ground," Elias said quietly, his voice carrying farther than it should have. "Turn back," one of the raiders laughed nervously, lifting his rifle, but his hands trembled. The others shifted uneasily, glancing again and again at the hide, at the old man, at the girl who looked at them not with fear, but with pity. Rourke snarled, trying to regain control, shouting that they were just stories. The power belonged to men who took it. But even as he spoke, the horses began to whinny, pulling against their reins, eyes rolling white. The wind rose into a sudden roar, circling the ranch like an unseen wall. And for the first time in years, Rourke felt small. Elias took a step forward, and the lantern light from the doorway caught the white hide fully, making it glow almost unnaturally. And the raiders felt it then, a weight pressing on their chests, a warning older than any law. One by one their courage cracked. A man dropped his rifle. Another backed away, muttering prayers he hadn't spoken since childhood. Rourke stood his ground, rage and fear battling inside him. But even he could not ignore the truth burning in his gut. This ranch was not defenseless, and the power guarding it was not human. As the night stretched on, the decision before them became clear: cross the line and face whatever judgment waited, or flee and carry the mark of fear forever. And as the white buffalo hide fluttered softly on the fence, it was as if the land itself was watching, waiting to see which choice they would make. The moment stretched until time itself seemed to slow, and in that frozen breath between courage and terror, the night made its choice for them, because the wind that had only circled before now struck like a living force, ripping dust from the ground and driving it into the raiders' faces, their horses rearing violently as if they sensed something no human eyes could see. And in that chaos, the white buffalo hide snapped hard against the fence, sounding like a drumbeat echoing across the plains, a warning call that reached far beyond the ranch. Rourke shouted orders, his voice cracking as his men scrambled to regain control. But the land did not listen to him, it never had. And as Elias raised his shotgun, not to fire, but to point toward the open plains, the old man spoke again, his words calm, heavy, and final, telling them this was their last chance to leave with their lives and whatever souls they still possessed. For a heartbeat, Rourke considered pushing forward, forcing violence the way he always had. But the images burned into his mind returned stronger now, men screaming, bodies buried beneath snow-white fur, and eyes glowing like moonlight through smoke. And his resolve shattered. He turned, sharply ordering a retreat, yet pride twisted his command into a curse, promising he would return, promising fire and blood. The land answered before Elias ever could. One of the raiders' horses broke free, bolting blindly into the darkness, throwing its rider hard against the rocks. And though the man survived, he rose screaming, convinced unseen hands were dragging at his legs. Panic took them fully then. Rifles were abandoned, supplies dropped, and the 5 men fled the ranch in broken formation, stumbling, falling, scrambling onto their mounts and riding north as fast as fear could carry them, not daring to look back. As they vanished into the night, the wind fell suddenly quiet, the plains returning to stillness as if nothing had happened at all. Silence reclaimed the ranch. Mara let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed, and Elias rested the shotgun against the porch rail, his shoulders sagging with the weight of memories older than his own life. He walked to the fence slowly, placing a weathered hand on the white hide, murmuring words passed down through generations, words of thanks, respect, and balance. Mara watched him, finally asking the question that had lived inside her since childhood, asking what the hide truly meant. And Elias told her the story he had waited years to share, that long before the ranch, before fences and houses, her people had protected this land. And when the world grew cruel, a white buffalo had appeared, a sign that the land would not be taken without consequence. And when the animal died naturally, its hide was given to their family to guard, not as a weapon, but as a reminder that some power answers only to respect. Dawn came slowly, painting the sky in soft gold and pale blue, and the ranch stood untouched, stronger than before. While miles away, the raiders rode in silence, each man carrying a private terror he would never speak of, each knowing that some lines could never be crossed again. Rourke would never return. None of them would. The legend had marked them, and legends do not forget. As the sun rose fully, Mara tied the hide more securely to the fence, understanding now that the ranch was never defenseless. It was chosen, and she felt pride swell in her chest, not the loud kind, but the quiet strength of belonging. Elias smiled faintly, knowing the responsibility would one day pass to her, knowing the land had already accepted her as its next guardian. And somewhere across the endless plains, carried by the morning wind, the spirit of the white buffalo moved on, satisfied, watchful, eternal.